Okay, welcome to the Common Briefing Program. This is an episode of the Common Geeking Program where each month we bring you the news. Three of us will sit down for about an hour to bring you the hottest headlines in geek culture, bringing you the most impactful, important, or just plain old interesting stories for geeks around the world. I'm Colin Ketchen. I'm your host, and I'm speaking quickly because I'm sleepy today. It's a winter storm, and I'm so ready to just, I closed all my rings on my watch, I ate my food, and I might just go to sleep after this. How are you guys doing?
Oh,
I'm good, but
chilling.
Everything's covered in ice. I thought that it was going to be snow, but then it was just ice.
Yeah, I drove for 4.5 hours today with, what should have been a 3.5 hour drive, which is not the worst add-on, but it was a little scary.
So percentage-wise, that's a big jump. So that's Jeff, who just took a big, long trek, and Austin, who's buried in ice, because I forgot to ask you guys to say your names. But that's fine. Well, but also, Austin, pedantic counterpoint. Snow is ice, just fluffier. So
yeah.
I am also covered in ice, just fluffy ice. Not
Flice,
really...
as they call it.
Flice, as they call it.
Because they need a word for it. They don't already have one.
They do. I find snow to be cumbersome, both in practice and in verbiage. So, we're going to kind of jump in and recap the geek news, the geek happenings for November of 2019. Here, this is December. We're ending 2019. I don't know if I'd say strong, but certainly with news. So I think I'm just
things
gonna
have
jump right in.
continued to exist during the month.
They sure have. So I'm gonna jump in and I'm gonna get us started. So I am primarily, I think, gonna talk about streaming services. Because
that's a thing we got to talk about.
Yeah, there are two big streaming services that dropped this past month, and I say big because one was by a big company and was expected to be big, and the other one is actually big. So the first one that dropped is Apple TV Plus. Now, Apple TV Plus is Apple's
not to be
foray...
confused with Apple TV.
Not to be confused with Apple TV, which is a physical hardware product that you can purchase and have in your hands.
I love that they've cornered themselves like this, they're like, oh shit, we already have we just have to add on things at the end of these words.
I was not even aware of this.
That's why we live in a world where you can buy something called an iPhone 11 Pro Max. So, yeah, we're not in great shape. The naming conventions on their stuff has really gone berserk. But that said,
if
Apple
you put
TV
that
Plus...
out 30 years ago, I absolutely would have guessed it was the name of a dildo rather than a phone.
And that's audacious because the word phone is in the name. It's that convincing. So
this is the new Pro Magnum.
Master condom for my Magnum dog.
Just so we're clear, I am positive that there is a vibrator out there that is made to look like a phone.
Oh, for sure.
There's also an entire industry.
There's probably an app for it that you can download on your phone.
That's actually the thing, is there's an entire industry, a very lucrative industry of these products called teledildonics. You're welcome for that. Now we're going to get back to Apple TV Plus. So this is a streaming service that dropped... see, I don't work for the company anymore, so I can make those kinds of segues.
No, I want to talk more about iDildos, Con. I think we've got a rich vein here.
I don't know if you noticed that. They've really changed the branding away from I to Apple, so it would be the Apple dildo. Now, Apple TV Plus is a streaming service that launched on November 1st, and it has with it 4 big shows at launch, which are The Morning Show, C, which is a show about blind people 100 years in the future, and everyone in the world is blind except for a couple people. You've got For All Mankind, which is by Ron Moore, the guy who did Deep Space Nine, Battlestar Galactica, and Outlander, one of the greatest sci-fi television writers in history, if not the greatest. And he's doing an alt history show where Russia got to the moon first. And then there is a show called Dickinson, which is about Emily Dickinson. And all the things that people were saying about this is all these shows are kind of boring and bad. And I was like, well, that's kind of a bummer. So the streaming service came out. I checked him out. they're all good. Like, they're all pretty good. Like,
Okay,
I
but
like.
your tone doesn't really convince me.
Or
No,
is it just
I'm like
confusion?
this because
I mean, I was
It's-
at least gonna believe that people would find a show about Emily Dickinson to be boring, even if it was good, just because
Yeah.
like it's just a bio.
does
So here's-
sound
no, but
boring. They do
not
all
really,
sound
so-
kind of boring.
that's
but
kind of
Emily
the thing. Is
Dickinson
people were.
great, so I would be interested in it. But
You'll like it even
Yeah,
more
well,
because the Emily
you would.
Dickinson show is very anachronistic because it is written, edited, and soundtracked as though it were a show starring millennials. So it's
excellent.
very stylistically back and forth. John Mulaney makes a cameo appearance more than one time as another historical writing figure. Dickinson caught me by surprise, and like I'm convinced that's going to be some sort of sleeper hit. That is a wonderful show. Morning show is something that like I watch religiously on Fridays now. It's just good drama. And I think the big thing about Apple TV Plus is I was so prepared for this to be sort of a garbage platform, and I'm like thoroughly enjoying all their tentpole shows. And it's $5 a month, which is cheaper than everything else. So I'm pretty stoked to be sticking with it.
okay, but if it's $5 a month, you got to divide that by the shows that you're watching, right? And you're watching
Yes.
3 shows.
Yes. Well, I'm watching. Yeah. Well, I'm watching 4, and if you compare that to other services like Disney Plus, that number gets
We'll
a
get to
lot
that
worse
one.
really fast. So, Disney Plus launched on November 12th, and it has one claim to fame: Baby Yoda, and that's it. So,
Yeah, I did not. So I kept seeing memes about that, and I knew that the new Star Wars trailer, like the movie, had dropped, and I was like, "Oh, are they what?" and then I realized it was from The Mandalorian, and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah. So, The Mandalorian, I think, is doing something extremely right. It's set after Return of the Jedi, and it is following a bounty hunter of the same creed as Boba Fett. And I was... the plot details on this, kind of like Apple TV Plus, were so scant that I was like, it's just going to be an indulgent fucking, here's extra Star Wars stuff. I'm not very interested in that. But I gave it a shot. I watched the first episode. It does something extremely right because it really decides not to take lessons from other streaming services, namely Netflix, where Netflix is like, we have a drama, 13 episodes, at least 1 hour each, go. And you sort of have to fill that space. Mandalorian episodes are like 40 minutes a pop, and a lot of people were complaining that the episodes are short. I think it's perfect because the show is slow and methodical at times, and you don't have to go through an hour at a time waiting for things to happen. It clips along pretty well despite being very reserved. So I was expecting to not care about Disney Plus because the only show on it that really is making headlines is The Mandalorian. There are some other things on there that I enjoy. And I was expecting Apple TV Plus to be a giant pile of boring shit. And I'm frustrated now because I have like 5 TV shows that come out on Fridays and I don't know what the fuck to do with my time because they're all great. They're all really good. And Mandalorian is 4 episodes in. Bryce Dallas Howard just directed the most recent episode, and she fucking nailed it. Like, her dad did Solo: A Star Wars Story. I'd rather she have directed Solo: A Star Wars Story. She did a great job. But yeah, if they are also like 2 of the cheapest streaming services, so I think for a lot of people looking for something extra to do, if you have Disney nostalgia, go Disney. If you're looking for new TV shows and Netflix is annoying you because they go up like $2 like every couple months, honestly, Morning Show, See, For All Mankind, and Dickinson are all very, very good shows that I recommend.
Which is not to say, of course, that you can't just pirate whichever of these shows are available to pirate from any of these platforms. I mean, I guess
Precisely.
mostly I'm pointing this at Disney because I feel like
Yeah.
their platform is like in the least danger of ever being shut down from piracy.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Apple has more money than Disney, but I have a very strong feeling that if Apple TV Plus doesn't make a specific amount of money, it's going to quietly disappear.
Yeah, meanwhile, Disney is fine taking a loss on it until nothing else exists, and then they're allowed to profit.
Yeah.
So, whatever.
Yeah, that said, Disney Plus, for a lot of ethical reasons, I'm like, man, I don't necessarily want them to be the people getting my money for this, as is always the case to put out something I like. No ethics in capitalism, but But The Mandalorian is a legitimately enjoyable show. I took my girlfriend through all the Star Wars movies in anticipation for 9 because she had somehow made it 20 years without knowing that the prequels were bad movies, so I had to introduce her to that concept.
She'd seen them and didn't know?
Yeah, no, I don't know.
Well, she had never seen them. And,
okay.
There we go.
And then we were watching the first movie, and she's like, "Oh, this is a lot of fun." I'm like, because
it is fun. It's fun for a little while.
It is very fun. And then when it ended, she was like, "That was fun." And then I don't know if you've ever seen Red Letter Media on YouTube. They have these long video essays called Blink It, where they really deconstruct those movies. I just started asking her questions from those, and the movie fell apart in her brain, and she was like, "Yeah, that sucked. I don't ever want to watch that again."
Mm-hmm.
But if we want to talk about good Star Wars experiences, Mandalorian is not the only thing this past month, for I have been spending my time playing Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is a new game by Respawn, the folks behind Apex Legends and Titanfall. It is a Souls-light action-adventure combat game where you play as a Jedi after Order 66 with the execution of the Jedi in Episode 3. And having just gone through all the Star Wars movies, it feels super at home with the original trilogy and with Rogue One. Saw Gerrera, voiced by Forrest Whitaker, does make an appearance in there. And a video game was able to afford Forrest Whitaker, which I was like, I wonder how much casting budget went into like those 5 minutes in the booth. That's a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I mean, Star Wars is... So, okay, to tangent a little bit, because I don't know the answer to this question. So, how much does Disney contribute to the games of their properties?
I actually can answer that, and the answer is it varies. Star Wars in particular there's a lot of very tight control around that. There are people who manage the brand of Star Wars very particularly, like lore masters, who when they were when they were called? Lore master is a real term for when people are managing a franchise like this. Like all big franchises that you can think of have lore masters.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous that that's what it's called. But
so the folks who run Star Wars and were helping, because EA signed a huge Star Wars contract years ago, and they have not been putting out a lot of games. So we finally got this one, and I read a story a while ago saying that originally they were like, yeah, we want to make a game about Jedi. And the folks with Lucasfilm and Star Wars were like, you don't get to use Jedi just yet. You need to prove that you understand the mentality of being a Jedi.
Do they even understand the mentality of being a Jedi?
Because it's arbitrary and they're the ones who define it, yes, they do. So the limitations that they put were basically you can't just give someone a lightsaber and call it a Star Wars game. You need to understand the philosophies behind this. You need to understand the design choices behind this. And once you've done that, then we can sort of talk about what you have access. So they were very involved. I forget if that was Polygon or Kotaku, but I read that months and months ago when press was coming out about the game. But the involvement there was pretty deep, and you can kind of feel it. It definitely has the vibe of a legit Star Wars property, and the game itself is fun. I'm sort of lukewarm on Souls-like roguelike games, just because I like games that are very challenging, but I can't spend the amount of time it takes to just throw your corpse at an enemy 50 times learning how to beat it. It just takes so much, you die so much, and it just wastes time. And this sort of threads that needle a little better. It has the accessibility of Uncharted and Tomb Raider, but it also
not even close.
But the combat is also still pretty rigorous, and there are rewards and penalties for doing well and doing badly. Nice. All that said, between Mandalorian and Jedi and some interviews with JJ, I'm a little pumped for Episode 9 this month, though the trailers have me nervous. It's just going to be a Return of the Jedi rehash, but we'll see what happens. But so far, it's been a good month for Star Wars. I'll just say that much. Last thing before I toss it over to one of you guys, somebody did my boy a big favor. Sonic the Hedgehog is looking pretty fine. So,
didn't we talk about that last month?
There was a leak. There was a leak last month, but it happened.
Now the trailer was in November. Gosh, it was so long ago.
The trailer was in November.
Yeah.
and
was
I
a long
watched.
one.
It is. Man, okay. So they ended up bringing on a guy named Tyson Hess, who has been doing artwork for the Sonic comics for a long time, and they brought him on to lead the redesign. He when the original design came out, he tweeted a thing that went viral, and they were like, "Yo, you want to come fucking fix our movie?" People were like, "Sonic's gonna cost $40 million to redesign," and it was only like $5 million. And one of my friends tweeted me something like, "They spent $5 million on a VFX creature." I'm like, that's not a lot.
Standard, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you want to know how much Jar Jar costs? Let's talk about Gollum. Let's see how much this can actually be. But really, he looks like spitting image of the cartoon. It's like the people who did Detective Pikachu took a stab at designing Sonic. It's just it's 1-for-1 plus fur, and that's fine.
The one thing I noticed about it that's kind of funny is, like, I know he has quills instead of fur, right?
Yeah.
But it looks like he mostly has fur, except like a couple strands of like quills, and I imagine that they kept that in the design because they already had like filmed shots where they used the prop of his like big thick quill with Jim Carrey holding it.
No, that might be true. I mean, hedgehogs do have like furry bellies and furry arms, but
it looks
not their back as much.
It looks weird because it's like he's got fur and then he's got some quills protruding and like blending in with it, whereas like it seems like that doesn't really fit with the rest of the new redesign, whereas they might have had to keep it that way just to like avoid more reshoots.
But all in all, even the trailer was better. It wasn't Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise in the background. It was actually a song called Supersonic, and then like a rocked out version of Hey Ho Let's Go, and it's just like it felt way more on brand, on tone. Not even just the redesign, but like the trailer itself was more considerate of the original tone of the source material. And putting aside the source material, it's a more enjoyable thing to watch. You get more of a story and more characterization.
For the record, that's why you have fucking lore masters.
Yep. That's why you get Tyson Hess in there to say, you should have been working with me from the beginning. Because I know what happened to the original Sonic, which is all the producers were like, well, this is a little wrong, this is a little wrong, and it was death by 1,000 cuts until he looked like a VR face mask plastered onto like a pile of melted troll dolls. So, but I'm very happy with the state of Sonic, the state of Star Wars, and the state of my streaming. So I'm going to hand it over to whoever would like to go next.
Do you want to go next, Jeffrey? I'm excited to talk about your topic.
Yeah, word. So, I mean, it's not news necessarily. Well, it is news, but it's not like a headline as much as it is the new Pokemon game came out. And it's got a lot of new, exciting sort of innovations in it. I mean, the story is pretty standard kind of Pokemon affair. It's still mostly our same game played, again. But they added a new feature, which is actually like a bit of a pullover from Pokemon Go, which is pretty incredible. So part of the area, like the map in the game, is this place called the Wild Area, which is just this like huge fucking open world, vast, expansive thing that you can like ride around on your bike and you see Pokemon like riding around. Like, I would say, and Austin, feel free to confirm or just like the Wild Area is probably bigger than like collectively the rest of all the towns put together, wouldn't you say? Or close to?
Yeah. I think it definitely has more square footage.
Yeah. Like I mean, there's, fewer things there in terms of like buildings and stuff because there aren't really, but it's like it takes like a minute or two to actually bike from one end of it to the other, which is pretty crazy for a Pokemon game. And the big thing that they added with the Wild Area is that there's these little portal holes that occasionally will shoot up these beams of light, and the beams of light, there's like these raid battles where you and other people online can work together to like capture a really strong Pokemon, like using teamwork, which is, I don't know, just in terms of like daily things to do in Pokemon, it adds a lot, at least for me in the game. Because before it was just like, oh, you've got like a checklist of things that you can do after the campaign, And then once you're done with that, it's pretty much just breeding things for competitive play. Whereas this is like, there's still stuff to do after the game that like replenishes over time.
It's also,
I don't know if you're as happy
Okay.
as I am, but I never thought I'd see the day where Jeff is participating in and enjoying a live service MMO. I'm like so stoked on this. Anyway,
No, it's a lot of fun because, like, you know, like like Nintendo doesn't have like really any sort of like live chat communication. I mean, I guess they might in some games minimally, but certainly not in this.
Yeah, I don't think you can use it with Pokemon, but like they do have the app that you can put on your phone so that you can go into like voice calls with people that you're playing Smash with or whatever. Or
right. You know. But like, you know, so there's not really any like sort of toxic behavior, and like really like the raid battles are in such a way that like if you have 4 real people that at all know what they're doing, like they're not at all difficult, so that it's not like, you know, there's much for people to really get angry about. And if you don't succeed, you can try again. And when I say not real, you can go into the raid battles with 3 NPCs instead of real people, but they're, you know, as one might expect, kind of incompetent for the most part. But it's a really cool feature, and it's a pullover from Pokemon Go, because like Pokemon Go started incorporating like a raid battle type thing where you'd go to a particular place with a bunch of people and you'd catch a Pokemon. Except it's way better than that, because I don't have to be like around a bunch of people who are just like way into Pokemon Go, way too much into Pokemon Go.
Even, but also like just the fact that you can do this in a normal Pokemon game where you like actually have to. Because Pokemon Go, it's like it's a nice thing to exist, maybe, whatever. I don't know, harvesting people's data. Don't know where it's going, but
it's a different game. But yeah,
but also I think I like the raids in this new game way more, because it's like you're actually making meaningful choices in the gameplay where you have to choose what moves you're using and stuff, rather than just tapping the screen as fast as you can.
Right, like in Pokemon Go, they're like the raid battles are in such a way that's like. Yeah, it sort of matters what Pokemon you choose to, like, if you can defeat the thing fast enough to catch it, but, like, hardly, and it's not like you could really run out, since, like, everyone has, like, over 200 Pokemon collected at this point, you know, like, more than that even, so it's like, you can't really, and it just lets you keep going in and going in and going in, right? So it's like, the raid battles here are, like, you can lose them, and they're shorter. And, you know, it's, I mean, not to compare it just too much to Pokemon Go, but Austin's right, it is a better system, and you are making meaningful choices in, like, the moves that you pick and the types that you choose and stuff like that.
Jeff, I need to warn you, before you get sucked into conversations with Austin's about these very special builds of how to do these things, you should understand that last night, before he tried to do on Mission on Destiny, he said, hold on. I need to go do something, and we went somewhere else, and he spent 15 minutes just upgrading, moving around, and like, I don't know if these numbers are going to stack right. So yeah, I'm so glad you have that, but if Austin says, do you want to raid with me in Pokemon? It's a commitment. He's ready for it. He knows what he's doing.
No. He just jumps on there, and it's ready.
No, but the advantage is Austin finds these fucking broken builds in every game he plays, so he will probably win.
Oh, for sure. But like the Pokemon community is built around like broken builds, you know, like those are just the ones that are competitively viable. Like everyone has already figured it out, like within like a week and a half of like the game coming out. So there's nothing that Austin can come up with, that people haven't already.
Yeah, we'll see. I think a lot of that stuff seems like it's solved, but we're gonna see. I don't know if you're talking just about like best like PvE, I guess, best raid Pokemon teams, or like in-game Pokemon teams, or like competitive stuff. But
I mean, like competitive stuff.
I don't think the competitive stuff is quite solved yet, because there are some things that seem ridiculous, but like, you know, there are VGC players who will figure out some crazy shit, and
for sure.
Also, people doing singles with Smogon or something who will figure out their own stuff. But I haven't been paying as much attention to that as of late.
Yeah, it's like so overwhelming amount of like information to come up with some of that stuff. But anyway, no, the new Pokemon game is really fun, and like, you know, like in terms of the story, like it was still kind of a breeze, but it's, you know, par for the course. But it's really gone a long way in streamlining a lot of the post game stuff that that you have to do when you're doing competitive play. Like they added new items so that you can change the nature of a Pokemon, which matters a lot because like whether you have a particular nature of a Pokemon, it'll boost one stat and lower another. So like depending on what a Pokemon's like weaknesses are, or like strengths and weaknesses are, you want it to have a very specific nature. And like this cuts a lot of work out of that if you're willing to just like, instead of trying to do all the breeding nonsense and getting all their perfect stats, which you can also improve. And yeah, I don't know, it added a lot of streamlining stuff. Even just breeding is like 10 times as fast as it was even in the last game. Have you tried breeding much yet, Austin?
A little bit, but not seriously. Also, just for if you don't remember this from the one Pokemon game that you played, Colin, nature here is a synonym for personality.
Yes. Sorry,
I did not know that. No, I was thinking type, and I didn't quite track.
No, type.
Yeah, I think I played Pokemon.
You can't just change
X,
the types, though.
Y. I played Y. That's the only one I played. No, so the one thing that I've been hyper aware of is sort of, and Star Wars shares this as well, the toxic fans, the angry fans, the bad people.
There you
who,
go.
when the game was coming out, they're like, this doesn't have all the Pokemon I want, so everybody making the game should be dead people. I haven't heard any of that since the game dropped. It has broken a franchise sales record.
So
what has that affected anything? Because it doesn't seem like it's hurt the game at all.
I mean, first of all, in every single new Pokemon game, you cannot acquire all of the old Pokemon from the old games immediately.
Especially not on launch, yeah.
Yeah, not on launch. So, like, it's changed nothing. Colin, are you frozen?
Maybe.
No, he's not.
His face is frozen. But, so... So, yeah, on launch, you can't ever get all the Pokemon, so that is unchanged. And a while ago, I was kind of scoffing when people are like, oh, they're just gonna fucking release, some of the old Pokemon as DLC later, right? And it's just gonna be a money grab. And we were all like, that's fucking stupid. Of course they're not. But now it's looking like not as paid DLC, but I actually think it might be kind of likely that they do release old Pokemon as just like, in this raid system as like, like during this special day, you can get this Pokemon if you do a raid battle, because like that's how they operate in Pokemon Go too, is just, they started off with just the original 151 and then like slowly added more over time. And it seems like it might be actually a way to use, like they might be using that as a tool to like keep retention in people actually playing the game, to keep huge. The hype going forward. And it's like and even if that's like a strategy that you're using, I think that that's totally legitimate, because like there's so many Pokemon that like no one fucking needs to get all of them in like the week after the game release anyway. So it's like it's not a big deal. But
the thought that I was having is, if you have largely a solved gaming ecosystem where people have figured out the most optimal strategies to beat these raids, how else do you change that but just injecting new content? So that every time you put new Pokemon here, it exponentially will grow the level of creativity and the number of solutions you have. And I think that that's a good thing for the game.
Yeah, I absolutely think that they're going to do that with past legendaries, because there's like only 3 legendary Pokemon in this game, and there's like a whole, fucking novel of them like from past generations, and like they, always have events to incorporate those. But speaking of like the toxic fandom, it's funny because like there is a portion of the community out there that like isn't a fan of all... Yeah, like isn't a fan of all the streamlined changes it makes, because they're like, oh, you used to have to work for your Pokemon. Whereas like there's also a lot of people playing the game that just want to play it competitively and don't want to do all of the nonsense that it requires to like, study all the Pokemon that you're like wanting to put on your team.
Gross form of gatekeeping.
Yeah, like doing all the doing all this. Yeah, it's like doing all the studying and then like figuring out how the Pokemon is going to get all these moves, and then making sure it's got the right ability, the right nature, the like and then having to figure out how to do all of that through like breeding and stuff. Is just like it's it's a nightmare, you know?
That confuses me because I do that with Destiny, where when I play with people who like just jumped on board. I've been playing Destiny since day one in 2014. I'm like, back in my day, if you brought a purple, you would get a green. Like nothing was what it was supposed to be, and you couldn't get anything, and there was nothing to do. But it's always like you are so lucky. Please cherish how wonderful this game is, and come have fun with me.
Like,
why would I make people feel bad?
Right, like for some members of the Pokemon community, they're just like, oh, they just want to dumb down this game till it's just for babies, and it's just like, yeah, but like that stuff wasn't hard; it was just like tedious, you know. Like there's such a big
all you
difference.
proved is that you had the time.
Like, I think the only thing that has ever made the game easier from like a cognitive capability standpoint, rather than just putting in a grind to do stuff. Like I think these recent changes, they just reduce the amount of time that you need to spend doing repetitive shit.
Yeah,
I think the only
which
time
is good.
Excuse me? Sorry, I couldn't quite.
I said
that.
which is good.
Yes, which is good. I thought that was uncontroversial.
Well, it is among the three of us, but
right, sure, maybe. Maybe other people aren't so. Well, evidently they're wild.
Fucking Verlicify types.
Like the last time that they did something where they actually like reduced the difficulty for like people to play it, I think was like after second generation, they started reducing the complexity of some of the puzzles that you would have to do in the overworld.
Which is kind of a bummer, because I did like those puzzles, but
also, it's like, I know the game is supposed to be like 7 and up or whatever, so I'm not gonna harp about it, right?
Right. It's like, and I do wish that the Pokemon games were more difficult, and I think that there would be a pretty easy way to incorporate like a difficulty setting to like put in at the beginning of the game, because like it's built right into the mechanics, but like the kind of things that people are complaining about them changing are just like quality of life things. It's just like, oh, I had to do all this work and spend 20 hours soft resetting my game and spinning around in circles breeding Pokemon. So like,
congratulations,
now it's so
you're the idiot.
Easy. Yeah, it's just like, it reminds me of that meme that's been going around of like the fucking boomer trolley problem, where it shows them having already run over 5 of the people, and they're like, would it be fair to the people the trolley has already ran over if we diverted the path now and saved more people? It's like, it's like that kind of mentality. It's just like, oh, shut the fuck up. Like, it was difficult, but like not in a good way. Like,
all right. Okay, so I'm gonna unless you have anything else pressing about that topic, I think that was a much more involved conversation than I ever expected to have about Pokemon myself. Awesome. Austin, what are you bringing to the table today? I know you've been playing Pokemon, but you got some others.
Yeah, I have a couple things. I think they're all actually on a related note about sort of like balancing ecosystems, or you might think of them as sort of markets in competitive gameplay. But so the first thing, which seems less competitive at first glance to most of us who actually play the game, is a bunch of D&D stuff. Wizards of the Coast released a bunch of D&D stuff in November. Yeah, so first of all, Eberron's coming back. There's a particular setting that they're releasing again, and it comes with a new class, the Artificer, which a lot of people are gonna love. It's a super fun time. You get to be a magical mad scientist instead of a wizard, sorcerer, etc.
Yeah, on Dice Populi, as soon as that was announced in Dice Populi, one of our guys was like, if my character dies, dibs on Artificer. Like, just like as soon as it was announced, he sent that to our group chat.
Was it Ryan?
It was Ryan.
Yeah, so Ryan, me and Ryan and Chowder are actually going to be doing a proper CGP episode about Eberron as a setting.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Probably he's been so stoked on it.
Not for December, I don't think, because it's taking a little bit longer to plan. So I think we're going to just start working on it now and then save it for the January one. But
that's great.
Yeah, so that'll be fun.
No, cool. That's cool. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that, because there's some fun stuff that goes in. Artificers are fun. Everybody loves the Warforged. Eberron's really cool. Yeah.
What's not to love? They're good bot boys.
Yeah, no, I'm playing one in a campaign that meets very occasionally right now, actually. It's super silly time. But Moving on, there was also some interesting Unearthed Arcana stuff that Wizards of the Coast released. And it was 2-3 weeks ago at this point. I could find it if you so desire, but they released an Unearthed Arcana that includes updates to every spellcasting class. And oh fuck, I want to have a name for it so that if people are interested in this shit, they can find it. And I put it in the Wild West campaign, and god damn, we post a lot of shit in there.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, wait. Okay, here we go. This was a UA that was released on, so like in the middle of November. It's entitled Class Feature Variants, and it's for like all of the classes. But pretty much what they did was as both of you should know, as people who play D&D, there are classes which can cast spells, and they know a certain number of spells, or can prepare a certain number of spells from a spell list.
That sounds right to me.
Yeah. But some of these
kind of going on your word. I've never played a spellcaster, and I'm always the DMs, and DMs don't ever keep track of that shit.
You should really understand these things, I think.
If you're the DM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm hyperbolizing. I just don't know it by...
Colin,
I don't know it...
Now that you said that aloud on this cast, if any of the people in Dice Populi hear that shit, they're just going to start making things up for their spells, and you won't be able to say anything
I'm
about
not
it.
DMing right now.
Fair enough.
Christ.
And be like, oh yeah, no, I just have 6 level 4 spell slots right now. Don't worry about it.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. You're level 3, right? Let's keep moving.
So, but a lot of classes say, like, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock. These guys only know a certain number of spells that you can gain spells that leveling up, and when you level up, you also have the opportunity to switch out one of your old spells for a new one. And what this does is it makes these classes like kind of narrow. They have to choose their skill set, and it stays largely the same throughout their level ups. But this Unearthed Arcana is giving all of these classes an interesting ability feature, I guess. It's a class feature variant called Spell Versatility, which means that for all of these classes that don't know all of the spells on their class spell list, like clerics or paladins or druids, or not wizards, because they can just learn every spell on the wizard spell list by reading a bunch of books and putting them into their spell book, whatever. So all these other classes, they're giving spell versatility to, which means that once per long rest, or after a long rest, they can replace one of the spells on their spell lists with another spell of the same level. So essentially, it gives all these classes, like your Bard, Sorcerer, Warlock, etc., access to their entire spell lists.
Oh boy.
It just means like you got to take a long rest, and then you can switch a spell out for a spell of the same level.
That's kind of cool.
If you go over, like, if you just take a couple weeks of downtime, or like less than a week of downtime at lower levels, you can completely change up your spell list.
You can be a jack of all trades.
Yes. And so this is, I think... So that's something that's coming out, and I think if they adopt it, I'm going to be sad for Wizards, because, like, the big thing that Wizards have is that they're the most versatile casters, and now their versatility is a little bit less, since they have to go do a bunch of stuff where everyone else, to learn a new spell, they have to go do a bunch of research and shit, where everyone else just has to be like, oh, well, I'm going to go take a nap.
They're gonna get less popular in gameplay, and then the company will have to change its name to Sorcerers of the Coast, and it's gonna be a whole thing.
No, I think there's still very good reasons to play Wizards, and people are gonna do that. It's just I think this is gonna give a lot of the other classes a much desired leg up, and I'm not sure how it's gonna affect balance and class choice for players overall, but it's an interesting thing that they're gonna do, and I think this is definitely, if not this, then something like this is necessary for spellcasting classes in 5e, just because the way that... So 5e, I think, hits this nice middle point between like the extremely railroaded character design that you got in 4th edition, which everyone hated, because it was just like, if I wanted to do this, I would go play an MMO. Like, it's just like... And then it's a nice middle point between that and the extreme complexity and customizability of 3.5. And I think they're trying to step a little bit closer to extreme customizability and versatility in your characters. So I think it's cool. And it'll affect the sort of environment that people are playing in by giving them more options, which on the face of it, I think sounds good. I don't know. That's
the upside to doing this with a game like D&D though is because it's tabletop. It's not like Pokemon and Destiny where introducing a thing can fuck up a vital ecosystem for lots of people. It's You sit at a table, you say, I don't like that shit, and you just ignore it and keep going. If it doesn't work, who gives a shit? They'll fix it later. And I think that is something that I think I'm glad to see them embracing like more radical changes.
Yeah, I mean, I still think they have a ways to go as far as radical changes with like the Ranger, for example. But
the Ranger is kind of a weird class, but we don't need to talk about that.
It's good for flavor.
Yeah, definitely good for flavor. I'm a fan of Rangers. I just like it, when I look at the Rangers, I would rather just play like a different class that can also cast spells and could have a nature flavor. Because it's like, I want to be able to help people more, or do more things. But anyway, I think this is going to be an interesting thing to inject into the game if they do it. It's going to shake stuff up because, right now everyone has like, if you're going to play a class, one of these classes that don't have spell versatility right now in any sense, there are ways to build them that are the correct ways for most tables, right?
Right.
And now it's going to be like, well, depending on what the sessions are going to be, we might be able to have like a really combat focused session, and you can change out a spell or two, depending on how much time you have between adventures or whatever, so people can like be more comfortable taking spells on their characters that are not like meta optimal spells.
Yeah. 'Cause that's always my thing too, is like whenever I play a spellcasting one, I'm just like, wow, that sounds really cool. And then I like read the description, I'm like, I don't see a lot of situations in which that's going to be useful. I should probably pick something else. And it's just like, you don't want to...
I should probably pick Fireball, I guess.
You're right.
But yeah, so that's a cool thing. And I think I think it'll be a good thing for the game overall, if that or something like it drops in. Because Unearthed Arcana is not official material; it's officially playtest material. So it's just like official fan fiction, kind of, that they use when they're designing new things. And sometimes they do really bad things, but this seems like a really good one. I don't know, sounds exciting, and it will contribute to more interesting stuff happening in the game. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was actually Destiny 2. There was TWAB, which people from Destiny 2 who play Destiny 2 will probably understand what I'm saying, but Jeff won't. So I'm going to say it for Jeff's sake. A TWAB is...
TWAB.
I heard that and I was just like, yes, this is normal. Continue speaking.
Yeah, so Jeffrey, TWAB stands for This Week at Bungie. And it's just like... It's just a little news thing that Bungie sends out every week, almost, to tell us what's going on as players who are consuming their game.
That's neat.
And so they released one a couple weeks ago that was about a couple things. First of all, if you've been listening to things that we've said on this news cycle in the past, Destiny's moved to this new season pass system where like there are different activities and story things going on in each season, but the game overall is free to play, but you can buy a pass to engage in these other activities. Woo, waha, whatever. Coming up is the Season of the Dawn. For you, Colin, I know that you probably know this, and other people, we're going to be focusing on different people in the world, a different area of the solar system than we have this past season, where we were on the moon. We're and dealing with these robot people. Well,
our moon,
and yes, our moon.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
technically
Jeff,
not our moon, but it's a close counterpart to our moon. Yeah, the moon's haunted.
Yeah, I'd always had my suspicions.
But anyway, it's going to be called we're going from the Season of the Undying to the Season of the Dawn, and with that, they're bringing fun sandbox changes to the class system. They're buffing, I think, strictly speaking, I can just call it a buff. to several
they're
of
buffed.
the fiery subclasses for each of the different classes. And along with this, with the season changing, they're going to change some of the funky modifications that you can add to your armor in such a way that it'll change up how the meta runs. And I assume that it's going to favor these solar subclasses when they do that too, because it's the season of the dawn, and it's like the sun, it's on fire. You're buffing the fire subclasses. What the fuck else are you going to do with the mods?
Checks out.
And it sounds exciting. I personally, I don't want to get into all the changes here because we don't have too much time left. But I think this has made me think about the season pass thing slightly differently, and I think it's sort of a connection to what we've been talking about this whole time, which is just like ways that companies are trying to get people to engage with their games and also keep the games worth engaging with. So a bunch of classes are getting buffed. A bunch of classes they've done things in the past where they buffed classes and nerfed classes, and the new armor mod system that they've added in has brought like a different level of depth to the gameplay, but they've also made like pretty clear pathways for how to optimize the system. And I think doing things this way, it allows players to like feel super powerful and have silly fun doing a bunch of crazy combos and shit in games. But the fact that they can change it up every season sort of makes it so that the meta for what's good in a particular season doesn't dominate for too long an amount of time. They like it's built in that there's going to be change in what's good to do in the game. And I'm not too sure about it because I'm not sure. Because I think maybe a lot of people feel like there should be a way to make a game that like the balance is perfect, right? We aspire to balanced games.
That's not
but like
really.
I think this may be like the second best thing, but it may be the only realistic thing is to have games that like have built in this a bunch of changes so that devs can just decide that so that devs can plan ahead and make sure that there is change without worrying too much about what's dominating at the moment.
I'm very pro this because you can't have a perfectly balanced sandbox because it's all arbitrary and something will change and something will break. You can and we at least have a system that iterates more regularly. At best case, this is like infinitely approaching balanced but never reaching it, and I'm fine with that. Especially even talking about like the bad old days of Destiny 1, if you remember Thorn, the exotic hand cannon that does damage over time when you shoot people, there was basically like 5 months where Bungie was like, yep, this gun is broken, it's too powerful, everyone's using it all the time, it ruins our competitive activities, and we are not fixing it just yet. Stay tuned, have fun, bye. And... And like you and I had tried to do like trials at the time, which is like was the competitive mode, and it was just like I didn't have a Thorn at the time, so I was useless. And the fact that we have like a regimented structure for this, I think that is lacking because sometimes they do it quickly, but you don't ever want to be stuck in a period where they don't. So the structure I think is a plus. Yeah,
it is. For me, for like someone who plays Destiny 2, and I'm like imagining how this is going to go in my head. I think that it's a good thing for the game overall because it makes it interesting to play. I'm not going to get bored if it keeps changing like this, but it's also like kind of sad that like so this season they've had this thing where people have been able to play with like 2 different types of subclasses, and they've sort of been ignoring the solar group over here. But then in the future, they're gonna put some focus on the solar, and they're probably gonna reduce. I'm predicting that they will reduce focus on void subclasses for this coming season. Just because it seems thematic. We're going to Mercury. It's right next to the sun. Mm-hmm. There's like we're gonna take away the darkness stuff. Yeah, it's dawning. That's like the opposite of the darkness. I don't know. Anyway, so I'm predicting that, and it's going to be sad to be like, oh, my Void subclass stuff is not going to be as useful for the next several months, and what if I want to play them sometime? It's just not going to be as good. But overall, this may be the the right thing for them to do. I'm not sure. So that was there something else? Oh,
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about that board game that you kickstarted, right?
Yeah, if we could zip through that.
Yeah, so I kickstarted the game last year, which finally came in the mail last week.
Yeah, it looks exciting as fuck.
It was it's published by Steamforged Games. They're the same people who have made a bunch of actually pretty well-known and well-liked games. They made the Dark Souls board game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they've done a couple of these more high-end sculpted things. And it's a super fun game as far as game balance goes. I spent too much money on this, so I currently have like the game to play it. You pick 3 champions. They each champion has a set of followers and some cards that like tell you what their different abilities and attacks are. Mm-hmm. And so you pick 3 champions of 4 varying classes, which are more like roles, I think, if we're going to get technical, but we're not going to get too technical. And then, you play against another person in sort of an objective board game where you try to capture territory, kill your opponents, whatever. Super fun time. There's a really interesting balance of characters that I could go into a bit longer, but what I can say right now with such little time is that like I've got some 14, 15 champions floating around the apartment at the moment. Yeah. And they're all super fun to play with, and they make you play the game in very different ways. And I would compare it to Heroescape, except that I think that
most people don't know what that is.
Well, yeah, there's that, but also that the depth of this gameplay is a lot more interesting in terms of like the abilities that different champions have and the sort of action economy that you're working with. But yeah, no, it was very solid investment for my Kickstarter. It's just my partner and I have been playing it almost nonstop over the past couple weeks. Over the past several days, I guess would be better. I don't know. It's a good game. You should look into it.
What's it called?
God Tier. Godtear.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I don't know how much
I see what they did there.
I can really say about it. It's just it's good. It's solid. You get to do stuff. You got magic boys and girls and goblins and a fucking demon who can make his attacks more accurate or stronger by eating his followers. Like, I don't know what more you could ask for.
You know what? I don't either.
Also, actually, wait, there's also a cool thing. So it's not just like fighting each other. You can also, it has like guides to do campaigns with like 4 to 8 people where you can play a series of games, and there's like you have to draw cards from a deck to decide like what happens. There's like a very light story that goes along with these campaign modes, and so like you can see, we're going to war across this continent for these god tiers, and as you do that, it's got this extra set of cards. It's just so many cards that you can like choose to like level up your champions and stuff so that they can develop over time and get stronger and stuff. I don't know. It's fun.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's great sculpts too. It's all pretty. I can't show that to you in a podcast, but you'll just have to take my word for it or look it up on the website because that exists.
And take your word for it, we will, as we move into the rating section. So now, the three of us will briefly deliberate, going through what we have all brought to the table and try to determine what we feel is the top story for November of 2019. What do we think is the thing you should be paying the most attention to? I actually do not want to go first here because I don't really have a solid nomination here.
I can go first if you make me, but what do you think, Jeff?
I'm stuck. I mean, God Tier sounds super interesting, but I don't know if I know enough about it yet. So like that sounds fun for me. But that seems a little niche for being top. So I think I want to give it to Eberron, just because I think that D&D is a big part of the nerd world, and having some changes to make people like it doesn't sound like they're super like life-changing things that were iterated to it, but it does sound like some cool stuff, and might be fun to try out some more casting type stuff. And the Artificer, because like you can bring it in a more like alchemy like direction too, which is something that I liked from Pathfinder that is not really present in 5e before that. So that's really exciting to me. So I think that's kind of where my vote is going personally.
Yeah, that's fair.
I kind of think I have to agree. I think in terms of impact, I brought the widest reaching story, but the truth is the unfolding of Disney Plus and Apple TV Plus, while I enjoy the content, it's like it's all just corporate stuff being corporate and unfolding in a way that doesn't really affect anybody's actual lives, because nobody's running out of stuff to watch, and people love Baby Yoda, but that like people aren't really even talking about the show as a whole. They're just sharing pictures of Baby Yoda. So
it's just the same species, right? Like it's not actually Yoda.
No, it's
Correct.
not actually Yoda.
Okay, cool.
But
I mean, as far as we know.
I don't believe... So I haven't watched the show. I'm just going to say I don't believe that that's the same species, because those eyes look completely fucking different from Yoda's eyes.
They are gigantic, adorable, gaping baby eyes. They are huge.
Those are fucking Funko Pop eyes on that.
That's what they did. That's what they did. They made a Funko Pop of Yoda, and Jon Favreau said, "That's a fucking TV show right there." But no, I think I'm also gonna go with Eberron, not just because I think it is, of the things we talked about, one of the more meaningful changes to something, to an existing thing. I think that it is the best representation of Austin discovered that leitmotif. We're talking a lot about the state of things being updated, the state of things being improved, and I think that Pokemon is interesting, Destiny is interesting, but I think, especially given the breadth of D&D and the D&D community and how D&D influences literally every other game on the planet, I'm excited to see them push things in new directions, because 5e has been getting a lot more content recently, but to my understanding, it's been fairly consistent and stable for a while. An injection of a class for the first time in 5 years is I think that's going to do a lot, and that is the thing I'm the most interested in.
Yeah, I think I mean, it doesn't really matter what I think at this point, but I think I'll agree with you guys, because I was wavering between that and the whole Disney Plus Apple TV thing, but like this is just more fun for me to think about, so go for it. We can put that on. That's the big headline.
Yeah, the Disney stuff is just like, even if the shows are good, then it's just like contributing to a monster that I don't want to contribute to, and it's just like there's nothing you can do about it, because so many people are gonna jump on just because like, wow, this is stuff that I like, and I like Disney, so I'm gonna do all this Disney stuff, and it's just like, oh, but there's so much more to it than that, and it's anyway.
Yeah. On an unrelated note, after I see things about the season finale and like narrowly avoid some spoilers or something, I'm gonna visit the Pirate Bay probably. We'll see.
Yeah.
For The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do want to see it. It does look good, but
All right. Well, let it be known the Common Geeking program does not officially endorse piracy of copyrighted material.
I do.
which is why you and I have separate lawyers. So that about wraps it up. D&D, the release of Eberron and its core book. That is our top story for November of 2019. I have been Colin, joined by Jeff and Austin. We try to release episodes the first and third Fridays of every month. The first one always being something like this, a little roundtable recapping geek news for the previous month. And a lot of stuff is going to happen in December, stuff that I'm pretty excited about. So I'm looking forward to the next episode. But that said, our website, commongeekingprogram.com. We currently have 2 other podcasts called Dice Populi and How You Doing. I make both of those, and I think they're pretty good, and I'm not going to waste time on it. Just check them out. Jeff and Austin, do either of you have things you want to say or plug?
Oh, well, you might.
Yeah, well, I've got an Instagram called Things I Wish Existed, and there's a dot between each word. I just post art stuff on there. The Transformers Real or Fake video that we posted on YouTube. I posted like a pilot episode with Pat that ended up being way too long, and we split it into 3. But I still think that they're a fun watch. And we've got more of those in the works with some quality updates. So if you want to see what that's about and then see how it gets better, say check that out on the Common Geeking Program YouTube channel. And more to come soon.
Once those are really running, I'll probably put those on the site as well. But I got to do one of those with you. I had a very good time. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Here's spoilers, but here's Ape Face from.
Oh God! Okay, that's what that looks like. Alrighty. So with that, we're going to head out and talk to you next month. Thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.
Adios.
Or
Austin just didn't have anything. He just didn't want to say anything.
I'm not gonna plug a social media thing and incur like the wrath of Disney or something. When I just told people to pirate their show, that's no good.
It's whatever. We're not big enough for Disney to care. Yeah.
But they'll have to work a little harder. Yeah.
This episode of the Common Geeking Program is hosted by me, Colin Ketchen, featuring original music by me, created and produced by me and Jeff. It is co-starring Jeff Leavitt and Austin Liebers, our returning correspondents. This episode is sponsored by Freewheeling the Credits Read, because none of that is the order I've ever read these things in before. The podcast can be found at commongeekingprogram.com with extra information, but we have 2 other big shows, Dice Populi and How You Doing. You can check those out. We might have some more on the way soon. We'll kind of see how that goes, but we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of the Common Geeking Program and another briefing program the first Friday of January. And thank you for listening to this. All right. I sent you guys the chronograph. If you would like
opened it.
Same.
Cool. All right. I didn't have the time or mental bandwidth to put a funny name on this one, so let's just clap at 110.
Okay. I fucked up. Sorry. I was too busy changing the name, so we got to do it at like 25.
25. Okay.
Okay. I'm ready this time.
Okay, good.
You and I had the same idea, Austin. We just
I hate you both. Oh, jeez.